Well, good morning, everybody. On with another video that the dude did about Kathleen Zellner's experts. Always very interesting when you've got a blood spatter, not splatter, but spatter expert to talk about the case. And this is Mr. James. So let's share screen. Let's go for that one. For that one. Let's go for that one. Let's move me there out of the way. And let's click on play and then on stream.
Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Erekose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hello everybody out there in YouTube land. We are back today reviewing more of Zellner's filing. This particular affidavit that we're going over is the affidavit by Stuart James. Stuart James is our blood spatter expert. I cannot tell you how happy I am to finally have the opinion of a blood spatter expert. And what this gentleman determines about the blood spatter, I think is extremely profound, particularly with the blood spatter that was on the interior of the RAV4 tailgate. Very, very, very interesting, and also very, very undeniable, really. The method that he used to determine how that type of a pattern could be left. Well, we'll get to that. It's interesting. Now, starting out, of course, we're gonna ask the question: why do we listen to Mr. James? Why is Stuart James anybody that we should take seriously? Well, he has been working in the field a while, but here we'll go ahead and see it in his own words, and we'll come on back.
Hey, Steve Stein here, and if you've struggled with soloing because you don't know scales or how to combine them to play creative solo.
I am a forensic scientist and bloodstain pattern analyst with James & Associates Forensic Consultants Incorporated in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. A copy of my current CV is attached and incorporated herein as Exhibit A. All of the opinions expressed herein are expressed to a reasonable degree of certainty in the field of bloodstain analysis. In my professional experience, it is extremely difficult to clean bloodstains with heavy applications of bleach and paint thinner. Okay, so there we have his basically credentials and his own opinion as to whether or not bloodstains can be removed with high concentrated or large amounts of bleach or paint thinner. It's his opinion that it's still extremely difficult to get out stains of blood. Okay, he just wants to make that right off the bat. He just wants to put that out there. So I'm going to go ahead and put it out there in this video as well. So that's his opinion, and I agree with it. So now we're going to move into his opinion about the garage. Okay? His opinion about the fact that there is no spatter in the garage. It basically comes down to this. And we've all been saying this too. Most of us that have been in this since day one, we've been saying this. There is no freaking way that he could have cleaned spatter, the type of tiny little flecks of blood that happen from a gunshot when you fire a gunshot at somebody. The splatter that comes off, it comes off as very, very tiny little dots. You think you're getting all those out of all those surfaces in his garage? Are you kidding me? Yeah, right. Okay, anyway, so here we're going to see, Mr. James's professional opinion. I have reviewed the testimony of Kevin Hamerl, Special Agent with the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation. Hamerl described there was Heimerl described there being no blood spatter in Avery's garage. I have reviewed the trial testimony of John Ertl, field response technician for the Wisconsin State Crime Lab. Ertl testified that he had had some experience with bloodstain pattern as a bloodstain pattern analyst, and that he saw no bloodstain patterns whatsoever in Avery's garage. To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, the absence of bloodstain patterns from a gunshot in Avery's garage is inconsistent with Miss Halbach's being shot in the head in that location. Okay, so there we have his opinion about the garage. Now, obviously, to us, this is kind of pedestrian. You know, most of us have already been, like, for the longest time going, yeah, there's no way that this could have happened. There's, you know, no way he could have cleaned all that blood specks off of every single little surface in that garage. But now he's going to move into giving us his opinion about the trailer, and the fact that there's no blood there is not consistent with the narrative of the prosecution that there was a murder carried out there in the manner described by Dassey. And anyways, so he goes into that. Basically, the fact that there's no blood in that trailer is a huge problem. It suggests that no crime took place there. It suggests it very strongly, as a matter of fact. So that's what we're going to go into now here. And you know, I went ahead and kept these in there because, yeah, I know we all know about, you know, the fact that the missing blood in the garage and in the trailer, it's a huge problem. But I think it bears repeating. I think it does. I see so many people out on Twitter, particularly guilters and stuff, that seem to think it doesn't mean anything. They seem to think that this blood could just get cleaned up so easily. I don't know. Anyways, so it matters. It bears repeating. That's why I put it in. Now, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and see his opinion about the trailer, and then we'll come on back. Ertl also testified that he was asked to identify bloodstain patterns in Mr. Avery's residence. Ertl found no evidence of bloodstain patterns in Mr. Avery's trailer. To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, the absence of bloodstain patterns in Mr. Avery's trailer is inconsistent with a brutal attack occurring in that location. Further, the complete absence of Miss Halbach's blood in Mr. Avery's trailer is inconsistent with her being stabbed or otherwise having sustained a significant bloodletting injury in Mr. Avery's trailer. Okay, so now we're going to get to the bit where he's talking about the bloodstain patterns, or the spatter, on the interior cargo door. So that's the back door of the RAV4, the big door on the back of it that opens up. It opens up with the hinges on the passenger side, and it opens up that way, and it goes completely to 90 degrees with the threshold of the cargo area. So, okay. So he basically, we're going to see here where he tried a few different experiments to try to recreate the bloodstain patterns that were in Teresa's RAV4, which the prosecution stated came from when Teresa's body, after being shot and was bound and everything, was tossed into the back of this RAV4. And somehow, with her being tossed in, that somehow the hair drug along the door and created some kind of bloodstain patterns there. And that was the prosecution's explanation there. Well, Mr. James did not agree with that at all. When he saw the patterns on that rear cargo door, on the interior of it, it did not look like the type of impact. It didn't look like it was left by impact. In this case, impact of the hair hitting it. It did not look like impact stains. It looked like cast-off stains. And that was a huge thing to him right off of the bat. Right off the bat, that was what he, So he went ahead and he tried to recreate what the prosecution had claimed. So he gets a mannequin. They weigh it down to where it's the same weight as Teresa. They, run some experiments and stuff like that. Then they take the weights off and try them again, and then they run a different experiment where they use an instrument, a blunt object, and wet it and recreate the blood spatter essentially. So we'll go ahead and go into that document now, and we'll come on back.
I'm Nick Nimmin, and I'm a StreamYard user. For the last 6 years, I've been live streaming consistently to YouTube.
Through a series of experiments that I observed, I have determined that the bloodstain pattern observed on the interior of the cargo door was not disposited by a bloody body being flung into the cargo area. For one experiment, a mannequin was obtained to reenact the scenario presented to the jury by the prosecution. Weights were attached to the mannequin to achieve a weight of approximately 135 pounds to replicate Miss Halbach's body weight. A wig of human hair was obtained that was similar in length to the style of Miss Halbach's at the time of her death. Layers of blank white sheets of paper were attached to the interior cargo door to collect any blood spatter produced when the body was flung into the cargo area. When a bloodstain pattern was created on the top sheet of paper, the layer was torn off to preserve the created pattern. After soaking the mannequin's hair with EDTA preserved blood, volunteers from Kathleen Zellner Associates lifted and tossed the mannequin into the cargo area of a 99 Toyota RAV4 that is owned by Miss Zellner. The goal of the experiment was to reenact the prosecutor's version of events, that the bloodstain patterns on the cargo door were created when Mr. Avery threw Miss Halbach into the cargo area of her RAV4. First, one volunteer attempted to create a bloodstain pattern on the cargo door by flinging the mannequin, but he was not able to do so. Then two volunteers threw the mannequin into the cargo area, but could not recreate a bloodstain pattern similar to what was observed in the rear cargo door of Miss Halbach's vehicle. As part of the experiment, the mannequin's hands and feet were both bound with rope in an effort to replicate the scenario described by Brendan Dassey in his confession. Excerpts of the... The addition of the rope had no effect on the experiment. After I concluded that no blood was being deposited on the cargo door when the mannequin was being thrown into the cargo area, the weights were removed from the mannequin to see what, if any, pattern was created when the weight of the mannequin was reduced to a fraction of Miss Halbach's body weight. Without the added weight, the mannequin weighed approximately 15 pounds. Even still, we were unable to create a bloodstain pattern that resembled the cast-off pattern observed on the interior cargo door. In another experiment I observed, an attempt was made to recreate the bloodstain pattern observed on the interior cargo door of Miss Halbach's RAV4. The interior cargo door was lined with layers of blank white paper to collect any blood spatter created in the course of this experiment. After creating a bloodstain pattern on the top sheet of paper, that layer was then torn off to preserve that pattern. During the experiment, the cargo door of Miss Zellner's 99 RAV4 was open. Then, when completely open, the cargo door sits perpendicular to the threshold of the cargo area. A volunteer from Kathleen Zellner and Associates created cast-off bloodstain patterns on the cargo door by wetting the head of a mason's hammer with EDTA preserved blood and swinging. Cast-off bloodstains were created when blood is flung from a bloodied object. To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, the bloodstain pattern observed on the rear cargo door of Miss Halbach's RAV4 was a cast-off pattern created by a blunt instrument. This bloodstain was not consistent with a knife because the blood droplets cast off by the blade of a knife are usually smaller than those observed on the rear cargo door. This bloodstain was not consistent with a gunshot because droplets of blood resulting from a gunshot are smaller than those observed on the rear cargo door. The bloodstain patterns that were most similar to the pattern observed on Miss Halbach's rear cargo door were consistent with the victim's body was in a prone position on her back on the ground with her head near the driver's side of the rear bumper, and the attacker was kneeling over her, striking her with a bloodied object consistent with a hammer or a mallet. While the rear cargo door was open, a bloodstain pattern was created that closely resembled the pattern on Miss Halbach's cargo door, which was photographed and attached as Exhibit F. To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, it is my conclusion that the bloodstain pattern on the rear cargo door of Miss Halbach's RAV4 was not created in the manner described by the prosecution and their experts at Mr. Avery's trial. Uh-oh! Abandon ship! Abandon ship! Okay, so there we have it, folks. I mean, we see it right there. He's basically saying he tried to recreate what the prosecution claimed happened, but it wasn't possible. I mean, they put weight on to make it like Teresa's body weight and a wig that was approximately like her hair, and then they wetted the hair with EDTA preserved blood, And then they were throwing this mannequin into the RAV4 trying to get an impact of the hair on the rear cargo door. They were unable to do that. It was impossible. So he then goes to the next experiment. He basically knows that the drops he sees there couldn't have been from gunfire. Couldn't have been from a gun being fired at Teresa, because the spots, the drops and stuff on the door would have been a lot smaller. So then they do another experiment. This time they get like a hammer, and then they wet it in EDTA preserved blood, and then they, with the back, the RAV door open fully, there's somebody there acting as if they are kneeling down over somebody whose head is right by the driver's side bumper, basically that corner, and is swinging that hammer. And when they swing it, when it comes back and casts off, that's why they call it cast-off stain. When the blood casts off of the hammer, it was leaving almost exactly the same pattern that they were seeing in Teresa's RAV4. So that really goes to tell us that most likely Teresa was killed in a much different way than the prosecution is suggesting. Just saying. Anyways, so that's that bombshell. Now, let's move on to Mr. James's opinion about, that little squiggle by the ignition that everybody has thought was just completely bogus from day one. Okay. He's going to go ahead and weigh in on that too. So we'll come on back. Opinions regarding Miss Halbach's RAV4 ignition stain. Through the series of experiments that I observed, I have concluded to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that the distribution of Mr. Avery's blood in the various locations of the passenger compartment of the RAV4 are not consistent with purposeful behavior. The prosecution told the jury that all the blood deposited in the RAV4 was from the cut on the middle finger of Mr. Avery's right hand, and that he was actively bleeding. However, there was no blood on the door handle, the key, the gear shift, the interior hood release, hood latch, hood prop, or battery cable. It is my opinion that Mr. Avery's blood in the RAV4 is consistent with being randomly distributed from a source, because his blood is present in some locations but absent in some reasonably anticipated locations, such as those listed above. The absence of blood stains in these locations is inconsistent with active bleeding. The stain near the ignition of Miss Halbach's RAV4 was approximately 2.25 inches from the ignition. Evidence photos of the ignition and the blood stain attached are attached in Exhibit H. To a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, Mr. Avery would not have deposited blood in that location with his right middle finger while turning the key in the ignition. Further affiant saith not, Stuart H. James. Okay, so what he's saying there is something that I've been saying for a long time. I even have another video about it. Is the fact that the blood is in certain spots in the RAV4, but it's not where it should be. It's not in the places where it should be. And what he's saying is that he's pointing out that the prosecution claimed that the blood was deposited by an actively bleeding cut on Stephen's middle finger of his right hand. Okay, and that it was actively bleeding. And what he is saying, he's not saying anything else. All he's saying is that if the blood came from active bleeding, then it would have been left in other places. It would have been on the gear shift. It would have been on the handle. It would have been on the hood prop. It would have been on the battery cable. It would have been on the hood latch. It would have been in all these places. His blood wouldn't have just been in those specific spots that really kind of don't make sense, but the fact is that it should have been on the shifter, on the steering wheel, on the door handle, on the hood latch, on the prop, on the battery cable. Those are the places that it should have been. At least one of them, because he's actively bleeding, right? That means it's just bleeding. It's just putting out blood constantly. So it's not like this. It's not like Stephen was able to tell it to stop bleeding for a time. I don't want to leave any blood on this handle, so stop bleeding. It's ridiculous. So that's what he's saying, that it couldn't be from active bleeding. Otherwise, we would find it in more obvious spots, more spots that make more sense. So anyway, So that's about it for this one, folks. You can see that there is quite a lot of questions being thrown out by KZ's experts here. They are very much basically machine gunning holes into the prosecution's case. I mean, this stuff is. I mean, I'm sure they're going to try to deny it, but I'm waiting to see how this is going to go down. I mean, I honestly. I don't know. I can't imagine that this motion or this filing is going to get denied. Everything that is in here is pointing out pretty much spot on, except now it's, instead of being said by a bunch of us at home sleuthing, now it's being said by experts, people in the field that are actually respected and are known in the field, and therefore they can weigh in and give a educated opinion. And now they're coming in and saying the same thing that seemed like common sense to us all along. With the exception of the tailgate, the blood spatter on the tailgate, that I wasn't previously aware of, honestly. But that's a new finding there that's very, very interesting. So, hey, that's about it, folks. That's it for this video. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you later.
So I must admit, as you know, done a video about this. I'm not a big fan of the term reasonable degree of scientific certainty. However, and I noticed obviously Stuart James used that phrase on several occasions. However, what I would really like to see would be Stuart James discussing the blood spatter with Nick Stalgate. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? I wonder if they would agree on how those various blood stains got there. Of course, slightly in fairness to Nick Stalgate, when you read his testimony and then you realize how Ken Kratz twists his words, Nick Stalgate doesn't talk about, Teresa's body being thrown into the back of the RAV4. That's Ken Kratz with his theatrics in court later on that comes up with that statement. As I say, I don't like the term to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. Why? Because that, to me, basically, that's an admission, isn't it? That there's a question there. But when you look at the blood stains produced on the back of the RAV4, and you see how they experimented to try and replicate that, and then the hammer did exactly the same as what's on the RAV4, then I'm sure that Nick Stalgate would enjoy learning about blood spatter from an expert such as Stuart James. Amazingly, of course, the thing that Nick Stalgate is mostly an expert on, bizarrely, is handwriting. But I don't think they ever asked him to look at the Sakiki letter. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Another video from the dude. I certainly remember him putting these videos out and watching every one when it was when they were first put out. At this point, we were very much chatting via Facebook and Messenger. I think it wasn't for a wee while before we actually started doing Skype calls and having conversations. But at some point we'll get to the to that part of the catalogue of dude videos. But I won't be sharing any videos with me talking with the dude. You can check them out yourself if you want. I really like his style of not trying to be overbearing, not trying to be too pushy, just pointing out questions, obvious questions. It is just Pete Bates says patently ridiculous that you've got certain blood stains in certain places, when if somebody's actively bleeding, it would be in all the other places. clearly, you know, those bloodstains have been placed deliberately by somebody in order to frame Stephen Avery. Anyway, I'm going to say cheerio. We're going to catch you all again soon. I do have on Thursday a Zoom call with a very interesting lady, so looking forward to that one. I'm going to keep it under wraps until I've got it premiered. Yeah, really looking forward to that, because I do find all this forensic stuff very interesting, particularly how, as I say, somebody like Kratz in court can just twist things to a ridiculous degree. Anyway, as usual, pop your thoughts, comments on the in the comments section below, and we'll catch you all again soon. Take care. Bye for now.